I'll read this one. Dear Professor Einstein, Dr. Wolfe sent me a copy of your letter. As a responsible leader of a group of decent scientific workers and of work of great significance, I must protest against the insult contained in your letter. At first you declared your readiness, quite spontaneously, to support this work in case the phenomena of the temperature difference, which you call a bombshell in physics, were confirmed. It confirmed itself before your own eyes. Then your assistant submitted an erroneous interpretation of the phenomena, which interpretation I refuted by experiment. You have failed to answer the long expose in which I communicated this experimental refutation to you. Subsequently, you were shown the greatest confidence by the communication of most important findings and hypotheses. Thus, enemies of my work began to utilize your authority in physics against me by falsifying facts and circulating rumors in a well-known fashion. After having postponed the publication of the facts presented to you in 1941 for over 3 years, we now ourselves forced to present the true facts to the public. I asked Dr. Wolfe to notify you in advance of the necessity of this publication. That is, I showed every consideration. To this you answered in an insulting manner by representing us as Geschäftemacher. Geschäftemacher.
That's a German?
Yeah. Probably obviously.
Something related to the lasers.
Who want to misuse your name for propaganda purposes. Entrepreneur. The basic facts of orgone physics are too earnest and too well-founded to propagate by shabby means. Thus far they have established themselves without your confirmation. They will continue to do so. You have no right to insult industrious, honest people who make the greatest personal and material sacrifices for scientific research work. As I told you, and it is confirmed by documentary evidence, there is no profit involved in orgone research. On the contrary, it consumes a great amount of money, and I can tell you that. And anybody who worked with him can tell you that. And Dr. Ike certainly didn't profit by it because he lived, all the money he was ever given all went into equipment and instruments, and for his living. He didn't live meagerly. Naturally, why should he? But he didn't have a Cadillac and smoke Cuban cigars like the government said he had when they brought him to trial. They went up the main and said he never smoked. Oh, he smoked cigarettes, but not Cuban cigars. You have no right to, why? Your attitude is incomprehensible to me. If you want to prevent misuse of your name, you should proceed against the rumor mongers and not against us. Letter from Dr. Ike. Dear Ike, you do a great injustice to me contending that I put into circulation disadvantageous views of your endeavors. I did not answer your last letter because I had formed an opinion as best I could and because I am not in a position to give it any more time. I have to ask you to treat my oral and written utterances with discretion, as I have always done with yours. Sincerely yours, Albert Einstein. And Dr. Ike, Albert Einstein. Dr. Ike put in his handwriting at the bottom of the letter, what an innocence. Talking about
A real change of attitude in that way.
yeah. Then Dr. Ike wrote back to Einstein's lawyer, Dear Mr. Chandler, 7 days ago I had written to Dr. Einstein protesting against suspicion as expressed in his letter to Dr. Wolfe. Thereupon, I received a letter from Dr. Einstein, which settles the conflict, at least for the time being. He wishes his discussion and his correspondence with me to be kept discreet. Dr. Einstein assures me that he did not set any disadvantageous rumors into the world. He does not refute my statement that he had affirmed my findings of the temperature differences phenomena on the Argon accumulator, and he assures me also that he keeps my communications confidence. Therefore, I think we should comply with his wishes. People should try again to misuse his name against me. In case emotionally, we shall have to face the problem once more. I ask you to keep the conflict between me and Einstein a secret. And here's the last letter that he wrote to Einstein. Dear Professor Einstein, I have asked Dr. Wolfe not to publish the results of our meeting for the time being. I regret to say that your last letter to me on February 24th did not solve the riddle of this affair. It is still not understandable why you did not answer my very sincere letter of February 20th, 1941. If you would have written to me at that time that you could not spend any more time on this matter, a possibility which I mentioned myself in this letter to you, I would have been in a position to answer truthfully questions asked by people interested in the work. I would have been able to answer any questions as to whether you have been informed about the discovery of the argon and what your opinion is in that matter by explaining that you are too busy to go into this matter. But by not answering your letter, you have created the unpleasant situation as it exists today. I personally would let the matter go as it is, as I have no interest in officially confirmations of my findings or in publicity. But unfortunately, I'm not alone in the eyes of the public. A number of responsible and outstanding scientific workers have the most ardent interest in the discovery of the argon from the standpoint of their special field of work. They are not willing to be as considered as I am. Thus, I find myself in a conflict between the consideration with request to your wish to keep the material of our meetings discreet, and the other consideration to have the existence of our universal cosmic energy, which I call argon, generally accepted. I do not maintain that you started rumors detrimental to my work. I did not maintain that enemies of the argon research are misusing your authority in a malicious manner. Okay. And then he wrote to Dr. Obermeyer, a student of his in Norway, to put an official library, the whole Einstein affair in Palestine at that time, 44, because it was in Israel then.
Who was in Israel?
Obermeyer. Then, in March 17, 1950, Dr. Ike saw this article in the New York Times. Scientists leave studied. Einstein ex-associate seeks to teach again in Poland. Ottawa, March 16, 1950. Opposition leader George addressed in the House of Commons this afternoon raised the question of the propriety of permitting Dr. Leopold Infeld, a former associate of Dr. Albert Einstein and at present a teacher of physics at the University of Toronto, to return to Warsaw to organize certain educational programs in cooperation with the communist government of Poland. And Dr. Ike wrote at the bottom, the answer to the great Einstein riddle. The news report explained with one stroke in 1950 what had been a riddle to me since I met with Einstein. Einstein's peculiar behavior after his initial enthusiasm. Maju had done a job once again. Maju is a character that Dr. Ike created about people who pestilence, plague pestilence. And but Einstein, Infeld did somehow to get to Poland, and he was put in charge of the Polish atomic bomb field. Also, soon after that, practically all the books of the press, Oregon Press, were ordered in Poland and Russia, and even copies of the accumulator. And that was that. And
It also should be added to that recent accounts place many of the people around Einstein and associates of Einstein, including Oppenheimer and others, as probably having currency with the members of the KGB and other Soviet spy apparatus, as revealed from KGB records in
oh yeah,
the Soviet Union.
what did you see that? Read
It was
that?
in the New York Times, and it's in the new study that came out from one of the heads of the KGB who's writing
Oh,
his
yeah.
memoirs.
Oh yeah.
They say how far back it dated.
And they go back to the 1940s, particularly during the collaboration between the United States and the Soviet Union, because at that point it was also considered appropriate.
Right.
But Oppenheimer probably remained what was known as a fellow traveler or sympathetic. There's no evidence that he passed on any vital information, but there was a general aura around the whole work on atomic energy. And this particular man, Enfield, is known, historically, to be more than just a fellow traveler. He was an active agent
Oh, yeah.
of the KGB and the Polish Communist Party.
Oh, if you remember at the beginning of the lecture, I mentioned this whole Hubble telescope and hoping they could find out where 90% of the mass in the universe was. And of course, at that time, Einstein said space was empty except for what we see. And this is the last one. Note, Willem Reich on Einstein. Einstein succeeded in fascinating the first half of the 20th century just because he had emptied space. Emptying space, reducing the whole universe to a static nothing, was the old theory that could satisfy the desert-like character structure of man of this age. Empty and mobile space in a desert character structure fits well together. Well, this is describing Einstein's. It was the last attempt on the part of armored man to withstand and withhold knowledge of a universe full of life energy, pulsating in many rhythms, always in a steady development and change. In one word, functional and not mechanistic, mystical, or relativity. That's Einstein. It was the last barrier in scientific terms to the final breakdown of the human being. Now, of course, that was Einstein, but now, as we all know, astrophysics very much said there's 90% of mass out there, and that space is not empty, and they keep looking. Well, no, we hope they keep looking. But what's the answer? Is it Oregon energy? Because
That's what occurred to me when I read the article.
what?
That's what occurred to me when I read that article in the Times.
Yeah, I mean.